Welcome to Master Your Market. I'm Chris Ashmore. Andrew May is an inspiration. He's a performance coach, an author, and he's the host of Performance Intelligence podcast, where he dives deep on mental fitness, leadership, and personal development. It's got a huge following, and as you'll hear, it's helped position Andrew as an authority in the market. With a background in psychology and a passion for helping individuals and teams reach their peak potential, Andrew integrates physical fitness and mindset coaching into his work. I've known Andrew for a number of years now, and he's always been on my list to chat with on Master Your Market. Well, Andrew, firstly, thank you. Welcome to Master Your Market. Now, you've worked and you are working with a lot of athletes, elite athletes across all kinds of sports, and even those that are individual athletes to team sports like rugby. Big question, really. Is there a common thread with the success of elite athletes?
No warm-up to start with, Chris Ashmore. Just go for the heavy questions, huh?
Yep.
Before I answer, exciting that you're doing this podcast, and I think you are the best person I can think of in the Australian market to do it. So excited to be involved, and I bought enough time to think about your answer, so now I've got two. Yes, there are at least two components I can think of. One is an absolute hunger, a devotion and a desire to succeed. If you're going to be world class or the best in any class, you've got to make sacrifices and you've got to work bloody hard. The second one, I think you need to enjoy it. And those two go hand in hand, because if you're going to work hard and you enjoy it and have fun in the process, not always, but at least have enjoyment and get enriched by it, you've got much more likelihood to go to that top level and stay there. Chris, we've all seen the child prodigy who everyone puts the external pressure on, exogenous, extreme at a young age, and they get to 16 or 17 and tap out and go, well, mum, dad, teachers, Mr, Mrs, everyone wanted me to do this. I don't. So those two factors, thinking about that question, number one, you've got to work bloody hard. Number two, enjoy the process. And I'll throw in a kicker, because an athlete can have success for 4 or 5 years, and this is in sport, and I'm looking at this in performing arts where I'm working as well. And if they don't shift from internal to external, they'll often burn out, or they're doing it for the wrong reasons, and there'll be friction. What I mean by that is you can start with a performance-based focus. I perform, therefore I am. That's more external. I'm getting feedback from you, from my peers, from others, from the media. Then I like to shift it towards an internal, which is aligned more to purpose and the reason why I'm doing this, and that's much more intrinsic. So summary, absolutely you've got to work your backside off. 2, have some fun along the way. And then to really sustain this and make a career out of it, you've got to shift it from external, from others' feedback, to internal, more aligned with why I'm doing this and what's in it for me, and then get the balance right between those two.
And, you know, you work with athletes, but I mean, the whole of what you're saying can apply to anyone, whether in the elite in business or politics or anything that they do. There's parallels of the elite athletes and those that excel in business and life as well, yeah?
Total parallels. If I think of, I'd work with a couple of CEOs of top 20 ASX companies. Tick, tick, tick. I work with a couple of entertainers and artists. Tick, tick, tick. I have worked with a couple of CEOs. Tick, tick. Didn't get that last one. They didn't shift from that performance-based identity to a purpose-based identity. They're not in those high-pressure, high-profile roles anymore because they ran out of fuel.
Right. Why did they run out of fuel?
Because I think it was still it was all external. So it was based on others giving me the feedback, the visuals, the cues, and not making the shift. Now, if I get a little bit deeper when I work with athletes, especially in contact sports, I put it into trimesters. The first trimester, they're young, they want to play professional footy, they want to meet someone to have a relationship with, and they want to get paid a bit of money. Pretty simple, okay? At around 23 to 24, they move into that second trimester. Hey, I've played 15, 20 games at the top level. My performance is bouncing, and I don't know why or how. I have a good game, I have a not so good game. I have a great performance on the guitar, on the stage, I have a not so great great performance. Hey, Maisie, can I really go deeper on this stuff now? Because I really need it to work. And the third trimester is the athlete, late 20s, early 30s, who is then looking at what's next, because your career as a high performer in sport and performing arts has a window, and they've got a whole life beyond that. And what I find in that third trimester, Chris, it minimises a lot of the anxiety on, God, what am I going to do when I finish? It extends the career, and parallel to that, let's look at getting some skills so we future-proof what you do next. So it's really specific based on those trimesters, because a young player that hasn't made his debut is a very different conversation with a player that's played for Australia for 10, 12 years and is getting ready for that next part in their career transition.
You really got to have that drive, that internal drive. Yeah, and I suppose a lot of those athletes do have that. But where does that come from? Is that from, early age?
Oh, getting very deep on this as well. You didn't give any warm-up to all this. Just go for the hard, deep questions. When I work with an athlete or a high performer, two base frames I'll go. One is essential mental skills, grounded in performance psychology. You'll add performing arts, add mindfulness, but there's a rigour to that. And I'll look at 12 essential mental skills, from self-talk and self-awareness, who are you, and energy management. The mid-range, I'll look at performance state, so how you control nerves, being calm is a trainable mental skill, and also mindfulness is both a skill and a state. And then the higher level skills is around pre-performance routines, confidence, focus, all those. So that's traditional. What I've learned the last 6 months through a few clients who've allowed me to go there, you can also tap into the dark side, but you've got to be careful. Now, the dark side, I first saw Tim Grosvenor, who worked with Michael Jordan, helped Jordan tap into the dark side. I interviewed a wonderful, wonderful man, and his podcast is coming up. I'm just looking at the running sheet. It's coming up episode 1, term 4. So our podcast, Performance Intelligence. I do terms, Chris, because I've got 4 kids and I want to be connected to them in the school holidays. Yep. So we record for 10 weeks while school's on, and then down-regulate for 2 weeks. So wow. Jay Stevens is episode 1, term 4. So that's week 1. Jay was a very good middle distance runner, silver medal as an underage in the 800 metres, and transitioned to being a very good pharmaceutical sales rep. And he won the best salesperson in his pharmaceutical, got a trip to Uluru, was in a helicopter 150 metres above Ayers Rock, and the helicopter stalled and crashed to the ground and landed in hard sand. Jay's a paraplegic. His spine wasn't severed, so he could still try and rehabilitate. Long story short, because I don't want to get into all the podcasts for time, but when you go to a spinal unit, I didn't realise this, but they rehab you to get ready for a wheelchair, not rehab you to learn to walk again. Jay said, F that, I want to learn to walk again. Late last year, he was the first person paraplegic to get to base camp of Mount Everest. It's a bloody unbelievable story. He tapped the dark side, and he said to me, if I went through mindfulness and pre-performance routines and all that with what he went through, he said, mate, I wouldn't have cut the mustard. Going back to, he came from New Zealand, had some trauma growing up, had a bit of a fractured relationship with his father, which he's beautifully reconnected. And he tapped into that, and he said that got him through those hours when nothing else would. And I've been exploring that more. You have to be careful with that, Chris, because if you open up the dark side and don't know how to do it in the right context, or it can trigger trauma. So to go back to your question, 2 pathways I'll look at. One is the traditional, based in performance psychology. The other one is tapping into that superpower. And we all have a dark side. Although I did say this to one of my wallabies recently. He said, mate, I went to a private school. I've got a hyphenated surname. And I was bought a BMW when I was 18. So,
oh, wow.
We went more on the 12 essential mental skills.
That's a contrast. It's amazing, I suppose, the resilience we do have in each of us, that we probably, if we put our minds to or our bodies to, we can achieve anything. But I'm listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger's audiobook at the moment, 7 Tools for Life. Just as a side thing, just to indulge a bit, self-indulge, as you're aware, I lived in Tokyo for 13 years, and I was invited by my boss to go to a breakfast where the great man was speaking when he was governor of California. There's about 150 of us in the room. He walked past within brushing distance from me, and he walked down to the front, and I was amazed that actually he was a lot shorter than I thought, and he was a bit older than I than you see on the screen.
He's mid-70s in the shade, isn't he? He has no makeup or CGI.
No, that's exactly right. But the command he had of that room was incredible. Like most of us were expat men, running businesses, sort of achieving what we're doing. But the command he had, very funny bloke too. Now, my question is that in his book, he says it's basically down to hard work. To succeed is you've got to put the effort in every day. And it doesn't have to be a lot of effort all the time, but at least something every day to get to your goal. Does that resonate with you? What do you think?
It does if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger and you've been blessed with wonderful genetics and then you train your backside off. Yes. Does it work for everybody? Well, hard work will get you ahead, but it's not going to make you the best in the world. And I think we need to be conscious of that. I often get a parent will make connection with me on social media these days, tends to be the normal medium. Hey, I've got a son who's good in tennis. Can he be great? Don't really feel like saying, hey, little Johnny's pretty crap and doesn't listen, and he couldn't work out whether he's forehand or backhand because it was not strong enough. But not everyone can be world class. So I think we've got to delineate that. And the whole 10,000 hours rule that Malcolm Gladwell borrowed, plagiarised from Eric Anders, the psychologist, and you can Google that, go Eric Anders plus 10,000 rule plus Malcolm Gladwell, and there's a big biff online. Anders' research was around perfect practice. So to become world class, he said, you've got to do perfect practice. And a throwaway line, someone asked him, have you got a time? He said, well, some is 5,000 hours, some might be 12,000 hours. He was violinist at the Berlin Symphony Orchestra. He said, but it seems about the average is 10,000. Gladwell double-clicked on that, wrote his book Outliers, which I think is a great book. But Malcolm, if you're listening to this, you've got to reference your material, mate. And he didn't reference. So incorrectly, we've had all these people around the world say, all you need to become world-class, Chris Ashmore, is to do 10,000 hours. Now, I know some people who've done 1,500 to 2,000 hours, and they're freaking awesome. I know some people who've done 25,000 hours, and they're still okay to ordinary. So it's the talent that I think you really need to look at. And on top of that, yes, do the work, and I call that reps and sets. You've got to do the reps and sets in a non-pressurised environment, so then you can pull it out when you need it most. So Arnie's partly true. What he didn't answer is his genetics.
Unless I haven't come to that, but he does say it's the quality of your reps and sets, and he talks about people. He sees a lot of men in the gym, women as well, who just go through the motions, but they aren't really getting the full, clean quality of each rep. They're just doing arms flailing about.
Look, and just to give Mr. Schwarzenegger the respect he deserves, he has been world class in 3 areas. So he's been world class in a bodybuilder, one of the all-time action heroes, and he also was governor of California. So it's not just one area he's gone across. He's gone across multiple areas. So there is some rigour in what he says. But
Indeed. Now, Andrew, I know what you do, but for our listeners out there in the world, what is it that you do?
I wear 3 hats, Chris. The first hat is as a CEO and founder of Performance Intelligence. It's a high-end performance consultancy. We do 2 things with Performance Intelligence. One, we run engaging events. That's from the keynotes I do to half-day workshops with a whole bunch of people to ongoing programs. And the second part is we have a digital platform called the PQ, or the Performance Intelligence Academy. So that's a large part. That's probably half of my week. The other hat I wear is as a podcaster like you. And can I just say thank you? Because I have been on your podcast a few times in different formats, and you've been on mine. And I learned a lot from you around podcasting, which even getting ready for this interview was great to reflect just on how much I've learned. Performance Intelligence, later this year, will be the 2-year anniversary. So that's the second hat, podcasting. And the third hat I've already alluded to is I'm the mental skills coach and leadership coach of the Manly Sea Eagles in the NRL. I work with the Waratahs in the rugby union, Super Rugby. They've just started with the Wallabies and worked with a few other athletes, including Tim Tszyu, world champion boxer. So I run a business called Performance Intelligence. I do a podcast, and I work with elite athletes. The thread through all that, the red thread, is how do you perform at your best when you need it?
Fantastic. And, well, if we can have a look at your podcast. Listen, I listen to it. I'm not just saying that because you're here. I listen to it, and
you're the listener. We've got the stats.
Yes,
You're the Victorian listener, Ballarat.
I am. Here I am. And you interviewed Amantha Imber. That was a while ago, actually. Was it for Performance Intelligence, or was it a different podcast?
Yeah, it was Amantha. And shout out to Amantha. We'll make sure she listens to this. She's an absolute rock star in what she does, Amantha.
She is. And I listen to her podcast too. So it was great to have you both on the same podcast that I do enjoy listening to. Now, you've interviewed, her, amazing guests. Simon Katich, the cricketer. Phil Waugh, the rugby union player. Caitlin Bassett, the netball
former
captain.
Australian netball diamonds captain, Seabass, who makes me feel short, and I'm just under 6'3". Seabass tips in at 6'5". She's such a tall, elegant woman. Love Seabass.
Fantastic guests you've got.
That's the sports side. And Matt Common, CEO of CommBank. We've had Shelley Roberts, who's the Group Chief Commercial Officer for Compass. Warrant Officer Ken Robertson recently. Ken is the Senior Advisor to the Chief of Defence Force. So you've got a nice blend of sport, of science, and also corporate and business.
I'm going to ask a question and then I'm going to answer it, but then I'll go back to it. How do you get the guests? Does it help to say, look at the Rolodex of guests I've already had on there, and does that bring them across the line?
It helps. You told me this, Chris Ashmore, that when we first started and I had no guests. I said, mate, how do you get guests? You said, get guests. So I've got to play back the feedback you gave to me about 2 years ago. The way I get guests, there's 2 or 3 ways on reflection. Number one is I invite people. With the work I do across business, across defence and across sport, I'm blessed. I really am blessed. But you also get success when you work your backside off for 25 years, right? So if anyone listening to this who has caught into the hustle, and there's some good parts of Gary Vee, but just hustle and you're going to work, or the social media thing, get a good social media following and you're going to get money, it's bullshit. You've still got to do the work. And then there'll be a few outliers, but most industries, mate, you've still got to do the work. So first thing I'll do is people I meet that are really interesting in sport or one-off connection, I'll say, hey, I'd really like to talk to athlete X. I know you know them. Can you do an intro?
Yep.
So that's the first way. The second way is I look at who am I working with, and I was reticent and uncomfortable to do this to start with, meaning someone I've coached, like Matt Common. I've worked with Matt behind the scenes for 10 years, like Cato, like Seabass, like Tom Trbojevic, like I've got one coming up, with Michael Bevan, former cricket legend, Jake Trbojevic, current New South Wales State of Origin captain. Bevo has been working with Jake with me, but Bevo can teach Jake a whole lot of stuff that I can't, and I won't disclose that until we've done the podcast.
Yep.
So he's been critical. I'd say Michael Bevan is critical to New South Wales winning back the State of Origin. There's a scoop for you. So in that podcast, I'll sit back and just wind up Bevo and Jake and what they've spoken about, and I set it up.
Yep.
But that'll be a beautiful podcast, those two talking about what we've done behind the scenes. Now, when I first started, I felt uncomfortable getting people I'd work with. This comes from your training in psychology, the psychology code of ethics. You shouldn't market or amplify what you're doing. But before I studied psychology, I'd studied exercise science and marketing, so I've sort of balanced it out.
Yep.
And I found putting a few clients out there in conversations and being more comfortable, we've got so much feedback, because it's not just me talking about science or schema or frameworks or referencing someone else. It's real. So I like to get a balance of those as well. I've got a rule, though, that I've had to have worked with someone for a period of time, probably about 1.5 to 2 years behind the scenes before I feel comfortable. Tim Tszyu, I've worked with Timmy for 2.5 years now. We're going to do a podcast late this year. I just didn't feel it was right. And also the work that we were doing, I wanted to keep that in-house. But we're going to do a podcast after his next fight.
Mm-hmm.
So first way is I'll reach out to people. Second way is people that I work with. And the third way is I am now getting people asked to be on the podcast, which is nice.
Fantastic. So you prefer to know them or work with them a year and a half or whatever before you invite them on as a podcast guest? Is that what you're saying?
I've been at Manly Sea Eagles for 2 years now. I'm heading into my 3rd year. I would feel comfortable now interviewing Jake Trbojevic, because I've worked with Jakey for 2 years and I believe I've earned it, or the relationship is good.
Gotcha.
Whereas if I was there for 2 months and I started doing that, it's still the part of me that has quite a high filter on FOPO, fear or care of other people's opinion. I think I'm blowing my own trumpet too much if I just started working with a team and then I get someone on that team on straight away. I think you've got to earn it. Now, whether that's right or wrong, that's my filter and it works for me.
So why are you doing the podcast? What's it for, ultimately?
That's a question that I've never been asked on a podcast, and I've always hoped someone would ask me. And now I've gone brain dead. I've got no answer for you. I do. Just building up some tension. You taught me this again, Chris Ashmore. You can't give everyone straight away. You've got to have a little bit up your sleeve. The reason I do the podcast, and if anyone asks me this outside, number one, enjoy the medium. Like I freaking love the medium. I've learnt so much. And I listened back to the first podcast I did, which was with NAB, where we met in the middle of COVID. And I wasn't a podcaster interviewing, I was telling, because my default had been a keynote speaker and you get paid lots of money to tell people. And that's how I started podcasting. It was a bit of a train wreck and I got some coaching and realised I enjoyed it. So the first part is I love the medium. Second is I get to meet great people, like that list you mentioned. Yeah, there's a lot of high-profile people. But as much I love talking to people like Dr. Tom Buckley, who's been on the podcast and involved in performance intelligence and been with me for 20 years, going deep on a whole range of science areas. I love talking to Owen Eastwood, who's working with the British Olympic team and talks about whaka papa and beautiful Maori heritage, about your origin and where you come from. And I love talking to a whole bunch of eclectic people. So that's the second bit. I get to meet great people. Third part is actually a great content creator for us. So with performance intelligence, when I mentioned we've got the PQ Academy, when we do a 60-minute podcast, say Matt Common, for example, there's no way I'm going to get through his chief of staff, comms, Matt, everyone, and do a 3-minute bite on how you get ready for a meeting. And there's no way I'm going to get another interview with Matt about what he's done for 7 years to get ready to be a CEO. And there's no way I'm also going to get how does Matt down-regulate after being with APRA regulators and doing a roadshow and looking at funding around the world. But I can talk to him for an hour and cover a whole bunch of great topics. And then we can get bites of 3 to 5 minutes and we can amplify that across our PQ Academy. So the 3 reasons. Number 1 is I freaking love it. 2 is I get to meet great people and learn a lot. And 3, it is actually helping us create good product back end. Notice I haven't mentioned it's for the numbers on the podcast. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, mate.
Why?
Because they become obsessed about the numbers. And if I go back to the very first answer, I didn't know you were going to ask a question that I could draw back on. But I think if you don't enjoy the process, you're not going to get really good. And you're doing it for all those external reasons. And I think if you're doing it for the right reasons and the numbers come as a bonus, like our numbers are growing, which is lovely. But Nigel Marsh, have you ever interviewed or have you been in contact? You know Nigel?
No.
He's got a podcast called 5 of My Life. Nigel is from England, and 5 of My Life. I love him. So check that podcast out as well. But Nigel says this, you've got to really enjoy the process on what you're doing and not just try and be an overnight hero. And if you enjoy it, the results will come.
That's it, sticking at it. I mean, there's that, 8 episodes. I think it could be even 5, actually, is the...
Pod fade,
5 episodes is what 50% of all podcasters do before they crash out. They can't be bothered doing it anymore, which is pretty... It's a lot. Small numbers. If you're
and just on that as well, on the operating rhythm, because I get asked a lot, like, why do you only do 40 episodes a year? And we've got some sponsors now, which I love. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors. And we're having some commercial conversations, whether we go with a bigger platform or a radio platform. That's something we're talking about in the next couple of months.
Wow.
But why we do 40 and why I don't want to do more than that, I can do 40 episodes a year for the next 10 years. Because I do it in school and then we down-regulate and have a holiday and then I come back and do another 10, but we'll front load and we try and be 2 or 3 months in advance now already because we're also starting to publish on YouTube. So next year we'll publish the same day when we drop the podcast. So the Young Kids Speak is drop the podcast. So we'll do that of a Thursday morning and then we'll publish YouTube that afternoon. So to do that 40 times a year and have quality and then have summer off so I can spend with my family and do a bit of work in sport, that's sustainable for me. And that's something that I think a lot of people are going to podcasting either don't think about or don't realise. It does take a lot of work to do it properly.
Yep.
It really does, and you know better than anyone. I feel like I'm telling you stuff you told me 2 years ago.
Well, it's sinking in. That's good.
Yeah.
But is it fair to say that, this podcast is called Master Your Market. It's to help people, market themselves. Would it be fair to say that your podcast is kind of central to your marketing activities?
It is one of the key areas for marketing for sure, and didn't start out to do it for that. Started out with a genuine itch I wanted to scratch at NAB, and hello Anna Marenkovic, who gave us a wonderful opportunity, because during COVID there was a couple of million small business owners who were just heaving under the stress. So I met Anna. She said, look, we want to put a program together. We came up with it collectively called NAB Business Fit, and then we put a podcast together. Well, I pitched the idea, and Anna said, do you know how to do that? I went, let me get back to you. We'll find out how to do it. So that's how it first started. But then now, absolutely, I get a number of keynote inquiries from the podcast. I've picked up other work, consulting work from the podcast. So it is a real part of our marketing strategy, and we build ads in enough that doesn't piss people off, but to let people know that it is a commercial venture now, and we'd love to have their support. So, yeah, it's a big part. But I'm also, and my team say this, they reckon I'm on 24/7. Like I love what I do.
Yep.
And I think when you love what you do, well, I hope when you love what you do, it doesn't come across as a hard sell. It's a passionate sell. So like regularly of a morning, like this morning I caught up with 2 educators at 6 a.m, walked across the beautiful harbour bridge. The sun came up, had a coffee, and I'm talking about doing business with their respective schools. So I'd much rather combine it with fitness and a coffee, and that I don't get a gut as well, and hopefully you're doing some good business. So that's another way. It's catching up with people in a nice, relaxed format. I think one of the currencies I've got is are you former? Like, when do you stop being I was a strength and conditioning coach for teams around the world for 15 years. So I'll say the artist formerly known as a strength and conditioning coach. So I've still got fitness, or I call him Mr. Jock, inside me. So I love doing that with execs, getting them fit. It's genuine, build trust, and then they tend to do more business with you.
Fantastic. Well, Andrew, before we go, now being a fitness coach, and if I can pester you with advice, anyone who's perhaps listening to this, and this could be me as well. I'm off to different pastures next year, moving up to the Gold Coast, new life, business is going to be different, but and my health as well. I'm the heaviest I've been in my life at the moment, and I think it's a reflection of how cold it is in Ballarat. But using that as an excuse too much, I think.
I've got to get in because I know you well, and we've got rapport and trust. Do not give me a bullshit excuse like that again. You think it's cold in Ballarat? Move to Norway. I was in Norway a few years ago, just before COVID, for a keynote presentation at this global conference, and I got up in this beautiful hotel, and I went to go for a run, and the lady on the reception desk said in a beautiful English, Norwegian English accent, what are you doing? I said, I'm going for a run. She said, you would die. I said, what do you mean? It was minus 17, so come on, champ. Don't tell me it's too cold where you are in beautiful Victoria.
Did you go for the run?
No, God no, I would have died. I was an idiot. I didn't do my research. I went to the gym.
There you go. Well, it's almost as cold here as it is up there.
You're wishing you didn't mention that now.
I wish I did. I wish I didn't. But any advice for those listening? Business, health, personal. Any final words of wisdom?
Let's make it on fitness, because a lot of people, at time of recording, we're getting into the warmer months in spring, a lot of people dust off the sand shoes and the goggles and the budgie smugglers and start exercising again. So this stop-start mentality, try and shift it and make exercise a part of your life. And I'll put people in 3 categories listening to this. There is a small percentage of people listening to this who love exercise. You know, they wake up and they go walking around parks, plains and ovals and terrains, and everyone else thinks they're stupid and should dial it down a bit. And I may have had feedback over the years on that. So I'm in that first bracket, and that's not normal. Okay? The middle bracket is the swinging voters. And for people of our vintage, Chris, they'll remember Days of Our Lives. I think Days of Our Lives is still on. Bo and Hope are probably still breaking up and getting together and breaking up and getting together. And that's what a lot of people are like with their physical activity. They get together, they break up, they get together, they break up. Bo even got run over by a bus, but they still got back together. Somehow, reincarnation, Bo came back.
Of course.
Most of the swinging voters will be like that. And there'll be a certain percentage of people who just hate exercise. So here's the fix. If you hate exercise, get over it. It's good for you. It's going to make you live longer. It's going to make you a more interesting, compassionate person that can self-regulate, and you'll have a better sex life. If anyone hasn't gone through that, yep, woohoo, got your interest. Suck it up and learn to enjoy it, because it's going to give you a lot of benefits, even though you won't like it. And even that mindset shift is, look, I dislike exercise, but exercise likes me when I do it. So try and find a way to make yourself do it. That mid group, the mid range, look at a higher purpose, and it's not about the way you look in the mirror. So for you, what would a higher purpose be, Chris, if you had more energy?
The way I look on camera. Oh, look, it's
and there was no cognitive bias in that. I mean, for a lot of people, they just go, "Hey, I want to lose weight so I look good." It's not really emotional enough. So go deeper. Why would exercising regularly be better for you? What would that help in either your relationships, your family, your business?
Exactly. It's having the energy, because I know energy is so important, and not just the energy, but the concentration levels. I know how it is when it's good, and also if you feel good, you do look good. And I'm not. That's. I mean, that's
it's an added bonus. Absolutely,
it's an added bonus, but it's good for business as well, because you portray that energy to other people, and they give it back to you, I think.
So just play that back to me. When I exercise,
I portray that energy to other people, and I get that back from them as well.
And that's also important in my personal life or in my family, because
I'm there for my wife and for my daughter, and we can enjoy our lives when we're all on the same level. Yep.
And when I look in the mirror and I feel lean, fit, jacked, that makes me feel
confident and confident. Yes.
So I've just painted you into a corner, and people listening, it was a very quick coaching session. But even as I can see you backpedaling a little bit, going, "Why did I ask Shiny Head this question?" You play that back and go, regular exercise is going to make me better at work. Yep. Regular exercise is going to make me a better husband and a better father, and regular exercise is going to help me grow my business. The link now is, what is regular exercise going to be for you that fuels that? And you're always going to have that decision mechanism. Oh, I don't want to do it. I know when I do this, I'm a better podcaster, I'm a better father. So when you come back to that emotional conduit, it's much easier to keep going. Now, what will often start people going is a bit of discipline from somebody else. I was a personal trainer for 12 years and thought my clients liked me. I realised they thought I was a friendly asshole. That's the nickname they had for me behind my back. But they'd pay me money and turn up. If they didn't turn up, I'd charge them. But in turning up, they'd get results, and then that creates what's called self-determination theory. So let's pull that apart. The first bit is go deeper and look at what are the benefits of exercising other than just looking better. And that is a kicker that can help, but those deeper benefits. And if I'm not in that first category, I'm the swinging voter in the mid-range, or I'm in that exercise and I just don't get on, suck up some of your hard-earned cash. Oh, but it's a lot of money. To do a group exercise class with a really good trainer, it's $20 or $25. That's a bottle of cheap wine. And when you say that to most people, they go, okay, I can't really argue on that. So go find someone to train with, lock yourself in, commit, and then everything else will catch up. For a lot of people, they think too much about why they should exercise, and they come up with all the excuses and rationalise. Short circuit that by just starting something, and then your thinking will catch up with the results.
Well said. Well said. And it's funny, I've got to ask you for advice and inspiration on something I kind of already know in a way.
Knowing is not doing. So knowing is self-awareness. Doing is self-regulation. When you attach it to a higher reason, an emotional reason or a family reason, that gets that emotional conduit across from knowing what to do to actually doing it.
Well said. Andrew, thank you so much. Privilege to always chat with you, but particularly on this podcast, as it's my own podcast. And I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Thank you for inviting me. And I just want to say thank you for the support you've given me, for the guidance you've given me. And I've learned a lot from you, Chris. And this is a heartfelt thank you. because nearly getting to 2 years, a lot of those lessons you gave me, and you were very free and open with your time, even though I was jumping on a bunch of the podcasts you were doing. I just wanted to say that you've really helped me and helped our team a lot as well. So I'm delighted to be here, but delighted to see you're doing a podcast to help other people, and I'm sure you're going to be very successful with this.
Thank you. That's very, very nice. I'm going to get the tissues out.
Now, how you pay that back, get off your ass and go get fit, and I'll catch up with you in the Gold Coast at Christmas.
I'll have to. Andrew, thank you so much. All the best.
Cheers, mate.